Hello everybody, welcome to the 2019 Holiday Card Series. It's day one and we are kicking it off with a brand new stamp releasing today from Trinity Stamps called Do Re Mi Yow, which I think is super adorable. There's some kitties and a light post and a fence and lots of other cute things. There's coordinating dies, and the great thing about these dies is it cuts out the sentiments, which I think is fabulous. And if you can see some shadows over there to my left, Lila was beside me in the craft room. I think it's hilarious that they know I'm making a kitty themed card. So we're just going to jump into the coloring here. I wanted to let you know that this video is also part of the winter release hop for Trinity Stamps. So I'll leave a link with some information below. There's some prizes up for grabs and some great inspiration for the entire winter release from the design team. So I encourage you to check that out. For the first little kitty, I wanted to color him as a brown little tabby. So I'm using E25 as my darkest, E23 as my midtone, and E13 as my lightest. I did add the shadows to the top of the head just because I felt like with the head pushed back there would be a shadow where the hat lays, and then the front of his face would be a little bit lighter. I also did some shading around the opening of their mouths because these cute little kitties are singing their hearts out and they're absolutely adorable. So these images are really easy to color up. I'm going to keep the colors quite pushed back almost. So I'm using browns, warm grays for my little kitties. I want the pop of color to come from the Christmas red that I'm going to be using for their little Santa hats and stockings and outfits. So I wanted the cats to just have these beautiful kind of rich tones, but not a lot of color in them, if that makes sense. So I did go ahead and add some R30 to their ears, their nose, and their tongues. And then I kept all of their little nose areas around their actual nose. I guess the muzzle, I'm not sure if it's called a muzzle on a cat. I know it is on a dog. But I kept those in white so they were consistent throughout the three little images. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to color the white areas for the two other cats here. So I'm using W3 as my darkest, W1 as my midtone, and then W00 as my lightest color. Now for some of those smaller areas, I skipped the W00 and just blended that out with my colorless blender. So by doing all the white areas first, this will help me know where I want to lay down the color. Now you will see I do make a little bit of an oopsie with the cat furthest to the right when we get going here, but I'm able to correct that quite easily. So for our little kitty in the middle, I'm going to color him as a gray kitty. So I am going to use the warm gray markers for him as well. I will often, when I'm doing grays or black cat, I have two black cats, I tend to do them in cool grays, but I wanted to have them be in the warm grays to match the pattern paper that I'm going to use for the background. So for our gray kitty, I'm bringing in the W5 as my darkest, and then my midtone, the W3, and then my lightest, the W1. Again, laying most of the shadow to the top of the kitty's head and then around his arms and to the bottom parts of the tail. Also a little bit of shadow around the white patch on his little belly. So I love the way he looks after coloring him up with these warm grays. I am going to do some of his patches in white and then some of them in the darker warm grays, so it looks like he's a little bit of a tuxedo cat, being, well, not really tuxedo because tuxedo's white and black, but gray with white and black spots on him. So I did go over this a couple times just to darken him up a little bit. I wanted you to be able to notice the contrast between the white areas and where I actually wanted him to look gray. So here's where I'm going to go ahead and outline my darkest shadows using my lightest marker for the areas that I want to appear black. So I'm just using my W3 here to do the outlines, and then I will come in and use that darker W9. So this will be the darkest marker I use for the black areas, and then I'll pull that color out a bit more with my W7. Once I get that done, I'll go ahead and work my way down through the other colors. So I'll use the W5, and here's where I make a mistake, and I ended up coloring that V between his jacket with the darker marker, although I wanted that to be white. So I'm just going to go with it, and I'm going to make his belly a little bit darker, although I still want it to appear white, but because he will look black, the darker shadow is fine for him. So I went ahead and just fixed that up, pulling out that dark color and then using my colorless blender. And I feel like this was a little bit of a happy accident. I actually liked the darker contrast this gave for this particular little kitty. So here I'm just going to now bring in that W5. For the smaller areas, I'm not even going to worry about the W3. I'm basically bringing in the W3 for the larger areas on this cat here to the right hand side. So just to give a little bit of a highlight. For their mouths, I don't know if you've noticed, but I wanted to have those a little bit darker because the opening of their mouth would be receding kind of backwards, so it would have a little bit of a darker color. Just about finished coloring up this little kitty. I did go over him a second time just to pull that darker color through. When I'm doing darker coloring, I tend to do a lighter coat the first go around, and then I can see where I want to pull that darker color the next time I go over it with my markers. Finishing up this little kitty here, and then I will go ahead and start with the red accents. So I'm going to be using R39 as my darkest, R29 as my midtone, and R24 as my lightest. This is a really pretty bright Christmas red combination. So I want there to be some red in all of the kitties. So for this first one, I'm going ahead and coloring his little stockings, which are adorable, and his Santa hat, the Santa hat on the kitty in the middle, and then I decided to color the little shirt on our third kitty in the red as well. So the only other color I'm bringing in to this card is a little bit of yellow. I'm going to use yellow on the star and then for the candle as well. I will go ahead and color up the outside of the meow sign on that cute little box there in the red as well to pull that red into that image. So just finishing up the blending here. Love the dimension these three colors give. So I went ahead and colored up the other little images, and now I'm going to cut out my images with my coordinating dies. I'm just going to pop those out, and then we can get started on creating the card itself. For the fence and the little sheets of music, I used my cool grays so that there'd be a difference between the white on the kitties and the white for the inanimate objects or those things that are not living. So the fence, the little sheet music, and then the candle itself. I went ahead and cut out a stitched hill here. This is using the Lawn Fawn palm tree border die. I love how it has the rounded shape. So I cut that out of some white cardstock, and then I went ahead and I adhered two of the little fence posts to the back of that little hillside, and you notice there I kept a little bit of space in between because I wanted the fences to curve the same as our little hillside, and I knew that this kitty in the middle would cover that up. So I went ahead and gave him the open sheet music because I wanted them all to have some sheet music in their hand. And then I'm going to figure out where I want the other two little singing kitties. So I sort of have my placement here now. I'm going to adhere the little box down, and I'm going to have that as well on the same shape as the hillside, and then I'm going to have the little kitty singing his heart out on top of that. And then our third cat I'm going to have on the top of the fence holding the little candle, which I think is really cute. So for the sentiment, I'm using the sentiment, "We wish you a meowy Christmas," and I went ahead and stamped that out and die cut that with the coordinating die. I'm going to add a little bit of embellishment here using a few of the little music notes that come in the stamp set. So I feel like this just really gives the impression that these cute little cats are singing their Christmas carols. So I'm using some of the single little music notes and then ones that are multiple within the same stamp set. I thought it was a good idea to get my sentiment on there where I want it. The pattern paper I'm using at the back is a very subtle gray with a snowflake pattern. That's from Sunny Studio Holiday Cheer. I believe that was a paper pad from last year. I'm trying to use up what I have in my stash. And I love the way that that pattern paper just gives a soft effect for the background, and it also plays off the warm gray colors I used for the kitties. So now I can go ahead and add my panel to the card base. This is an A2 size card at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I did have a second sentiment stamped out here, and this one, the coordinating dies cut it out as well, and it just says fa with a lot of la la la's. So I added that to the inside. Then just to finish off, I'm going to add a little bit of white gel pen for some highlights. And then I just needed to clean up that one area under the little kitty's arm where some of the red got onto the outer edge. I am going to add 3 dots on each side of their cheeks just to give them a little bit more character. Love these little cuties. Their faces and expressions are absolutely adorable. So there is day 1 of the holiday card series. I'll leave some more videos at the end, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you really soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.